and welcome. I'm DDF Racer, and recently I've kind of been blown away by just how good the AI is in iRacing. iRacing isn't my main sim usually, but over the past few months I've been taking part in a couple of league championships hosted by OzNZ Sim Racing. Link to that playlist on the top of the screen somewhere right now. And to get back up to speed on how iRacing drives, and also check all of my recording settings and overlays work okay, I did some AI races because the last thing I wanted to do was practice on the official servers and bin it into real people who take their racing very, very seriously.
Are you fucking serious, man? You know how to pass someone, or are you just retarded?
Now, I didn't have high expectations of the AI in iRacing because, well, this is a sim that's been developed and is known pretty much exclusively for its online racing. And also, why would you pay a monthly subscription to an online racing service and then not use that online racing service? I always thought that them introducing AI was a bit of a paradox. Turns out that iRacing's AI could actually be some of the best I've ever driven against. Why? Well, they're believable. They take proper racing lines and have believable levels of grip. There's not one particular corner where they gain half a second every lap and then another corner where you gain it all back again. Performance is incredibly similar to what an actual human can drive like once you dial in the skill level slider, maybe because it's modeled on actual iRacing member data. Each AI driver also has their own personality. Some will crack under pressure, whereas others are solid defenders. Some will give up the position quite easily if you get a run on them, whereas others will defend like crazy and not let you through at all costs. They're not robots, and they will make mistakes. A little wiggle in the rear under acceleration, the occasional missed braking zone, or even the complete loss of control either when under pressure, battling another AI, or completely unforced. I've overtaken AI parked by the side of the track because they lost it all by themselves, and that's just awesome. Just like racing against humans, anything can happen and you can get a freebie at any time. That's not something that you see in many other sims at all. However, here, it all happens incredibly naturally. It's also super easy to configure a race exactly how you'd like. Just a set of sliders and checkboxes, and away you go. You don't even need to own all the content either. For example, when doing multi-class and racing against a field full of all of the available GT3s and some LMP2s thrown in for good measure, just so long as you have the car you want to drive, you're good. Looking at you, R-Factor 2. I've had some genuinely exciting races against the AI where I've been driving my ring off just to keep up with 7th place, or had 3 wide battles with some cheeky 0x panel rubbing. There have been times when I've gotten lost in the moment and forgotten that I'm not actually racing against real people, and getting pretty frustrated at them because I couldn't find a way through because they were actually, you know, driving properly. Now, this is all well and good, but why even bother racing against the AI? I mean, iRacing is renowned for having a massive online player base, so why wouldn't you just use that? Well, I found it to be a handy practice tool before heading onto the servers because in terms of racecraft, strategy, and battling wheel to wheel, well, hot lapping solo doesn't really prepare you for that, and when you grid up with zero race experience, shit gets real pretty quickly. Now, I personally find that I can get into more of a rhythm when I'm chasing down another car instead of pounding around an empty track just watching my delta. My average lap time tends to fall instead of just my personal best. And the racing lines are pretty spot on as well since they use actual player data. It makes it easy to find out where your weak points are and gives you an idea of which corners to focus on. And it's also a great way to practice the most chaotic part of the race as well, the start. With the handy little restart session button, you can rerun that crucial first lap as many times as you like, perfect your clutch technique, standing and rolling starts, that kind of thing, without having the added pressure of stuffing up around real people. It also gives you the chance to practice inside versus outside lines when battling and find out where the grip is on the track. The last thing you want to be doing mid-race is exploring the unknown for the first time, for example, trying to overtake around the outside, only to realize there is no grip there and binning it.
Oh, DD Spinny!
Setting up an AI race is also a great way to get used to dealing with traffic, particularly multi-class closing speeds, such as LMP2 and GT3, and learning which corners are the best to let people through and which ones cost you so much time if you get stuck behind a slower car. By the way, if you're still watching and enjoying this video, maybe consider leaving it a like. Believe it or not, that actually genuinely does help the channel out. And share your thoughts below in the comments. Also, subscribe to see more like this and, you know, some actual sim racing. Learning techniques aside, having the ability to race against the AI in iRacing is a nice way to experience the more obscure car track combos that aren't quite so popular on the official servers, but you still want to enjoy. You know, maybe that combo doesn't come up on the schedule that often, or maybe you just can't make it when it does. And for those of you who are mostly offline racers anyway, iRacing is actually one of the best sims out there for when it comes to creating your own custom championships with custom grids, custom liveries, and so on. You can really drill down and change every little detail, including the individual personality characteristics of your opponents. It really comes down to just how much time you got to spend setting it all up. Not everything's good news though. There are some flaws and some downsides when it comes to iRacing's AI. Not all cars and tracks are actually compatible or available to race with AI, although this list grows smaller every week as the devs are constantly updating it. Defensive lines can be a little over the top and predictable sometimes. There are certain AI characteristics that whenever you get within a certain distance, they'll literally go all the way to the inside wall and severely compromise their line, which I guess that some of the less experienced real human drivers may do. It's effective in terms of stopping you from making that overtake, but it's pretty unrealistic when it's every lap, and it does kind of remind you in a painfully obvious way that you're racing against a behavioral algorithm. AI rejoining is pretty bad too. Should they end up off the track or facing the wrong way, they won't budge when traffic is oncoming, even if it's completely safe to, for example, reverse out of the way and then rejoin. If there's a car approaching, it's kind of a rabbit in the headlights situation, and they just park it until the track is completely clear. Racing against AI also doesn't prepare you for the joys of netcode. Now, surely this is a good thing, you say. No netcode! Well, not really. Hear me out on this one. Since you can race against the AI much closer than you would on the official servers, it can form bad habits of how close you can go wheel to wheel and lull you into a false sense of security, which does not apply when you're racing against old mate Blinky from the other side of the planet. Now, this one isn't really specific to iRacing, as it's an AI trait you'll find in pretty much every sim out there, unfortunately, but the first lap can be a bit slow, with massive open gaps to gain several positions as everybody tries to find some space. You'll hardly come across any first lap incidents, which, let's be honest, is nothing like racing real humans at all. And then the pace will increase gradually once those positions have been sorted out and the field is a bit more nose to tail. In general, AI to one side, iRacing isn't really the best at any particular area. It doesn't have the best physics or force feedback, although they're significantly better than they used to be. It doesn't have the best graphics, but then again, if you're racing for the sake of competition, are super flashy graphics a priority? It doesn't have the most variety of content or mod support, outside of custom skins via trading paints of course, but to be fair, they are constantly adding new cars and tracks every few months. And it certainly doesn't have the best netcode either, however but there's yeah, nah, I can't defend that one. And it is most definitely not the cheapest sim, not by a long shot actually. iRacing can be a serious investment. But you know what? None of those areas are particularly bad, or more importantly, broken. For example, Automobilista 2 looks absolutely fantastic and runs great in VR, but the woeful AI and oversteery handling across the board can leave a little bit to be desired. Raceroom's force feedback is top-notch, and the variety of content is great, but the game engine struggles to make the most out of modern top-end hardware, and server issues are becoming increasingly common, unfortunately. ACC has got GT racing absolutely nailed like no other sim out there, but that's because GT racing is literally all it does. And as for R Factor 2... Actually, you know what, that's a little bit unfair. I haven't really used RF2 for a while, and apparently it's a lot better than it used to be. I should probably spend some more time in it. All in all, iRacing is a stable platform that, aside from the superb multiplayer structure and online competition system, doesn't really have a standout area, but it just works. And at the moment, I'd say that makes it probably the best all-round sim experience out there, if you can afford it. And going back to an earlier point I made about why you would even use an online sim racing platform to not race online, well, because I honestly think that AI in iRacing is at the level where you can suspend your disbelief that you're not actually racing against humans and just enjoy it for what it is. From my experience at least, I had no moments which snapped me out of that immersion and reminded me, hey, you, see that guy over there? That's not an actual human you're racing. Sometimes you don't want to be racing against actual humans because things can get stressful, mistakes can happen, and people get a bit ragey. Sometimes you just want to do things on your terms when you want. Perhaps you just can't be bothered waiting another 2 hours for the server to come around and the next race on the schedule to start because maybe you've got other things going on in your life right now. The truth is, if you made it this far in the video, you're watching because you're a sim racer and, just like me, you want to enjoy a good race. You clicked on this video because of the ever so slightly, but not quite, clickbait title and wanted to know what I thought. And in my honest opinion, if iRacing can give you that good racing experience that you're constantly searching for, then you'd be foolish not to give it a go, whether it's against the AI or not. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.